In this video, we're going to go over the first section of Chapter 5, and this is about designing samples and the basic vocabulary of different samples. And so the first thing to keep in mind is that a sample, when you sample something, you're taking a part of a population, and when you have a census, you're taking 100% of a population, every single individual, whereas a sample, you're just trying to kind of create an image of what is in a population. And so as far as different types of samples, the first thing is that a probability sample gives each member a known chance of being selected. And so one of the most common types of samples is a simple random sample. And in this case, all subjects have an equal chance of being chosen. So if, say, you have a group of 200 people, you say, oh, you have everyone put their name in a hat, and you say, I'm going to pick 5 names. Everybody in that sample has an equal chance of being chosen, which is 5 over 20, which is 1/40. And so in a stratified random sample, you divide the population into groups, and this is going to be based on similarity. And then within each group or strata, you're going to conduct a simple random sample within that. And usually when people use a simple stratified random sample, it's when you have, in one case with politics, if you have an urban area, a rural area, or a suburban area, kind of try to see which candidate within each area. And then also there's cluster samples. And cluster samples, usually when you use that, it's geographically, and you should have clusters that are approximately the same size. And what you do is you separate them into clusters, and then you randomly choose whole clusters. So if, say, you have 10 clusters, and each cluster has 20 people, then you might choose 3 clusters, but you do all 20 people in that cluster. And then there's another sampling technique, which is called multistage sampling. And with this is you have different stages of how you conduct samples. And so your first stage, you might sample, if you're doing geographically, you might sample within different counties in the United States. And then in your second stage, you would probably go within that and you would look at sample within different towns. And then the third stage, you would go one step further and you would sample within different neighborhoods. And then for the fourth stage, you're going to sample one step even further and you're going to do the different households. And so for multi-stage sampling, this is usually used to restrict random selection. And it's also in some cases less expensive than conducting a simple random sample because it's expensive to send people to collect data. And then also we have what's called random digits. And so usually this is used when you're given a random digit table or a random number generator. This is also on your calculator, or sometimes with the AP free response data and graphs packet with all the different Z and T distributions, they'll give you a list of random digits. And so let's create a situation. Let's say we have 5 people, Bob, Joe, Kevin, Stan, and Mark, and they're all in the running to go on a business trip, but the company can only choose 2 people. So let's assign each person a number. So let's start at 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then what you do is you look at your random digit numbers. And let's see, the first number is 6, but there is no 6, so we're just gonna cross it out. Next number is 7, but there's no 7, cross it out. 8, no 8, cross it out. Now we have a 2, so then we're gonna circle this, and Kevin can go on the trip. Next number 3, we're gonna circle the 3, and then Stan can go on the trip. So that's how you use a random digit generator. Also, be sure if you have a list of more than 10 people, you should list it out by going 0, 0, then 0, 1, just because then if you have, say, the number 11, that's going to be confusing with like 1 and then or 2 and then on to 11, because is it a 1 or is it 11? And this will give each person an equal opportunity. And then also, when you have samples, you're going to have bias. And bias is when you conduct a sample in a way that favors certain outcomes. One way of this bias is questionnaire bias. And that's when you have poorly worded questions that can sway results, or in some cases, the survey will lead you on to believe a certain idea or give you one side of an argument. Also, this is common with, I believe there was a questionnaire with small children and they didn't really understand what it was about, and so they all chose one way. So that's when the questionnaire itself has flaws. And then also we have voluntary response bias. And this is when subjects themselves choose whether they want to answer a survey or not. For example, when you have something pops up on your TV and it says, call this number now if you believe we should have stricter gun laws, only people that are really passionate about this cause or this idea are going to respond and, pick up the phone and pay the toll for the phone call. And then also what we have is non-response bias, and that's when subjects don't answer. So for example, if you call each house during the week at 2 p.m., you're going to have a lot of non-response bias because people that, go to the office or go to work at that time aren't going to be at home to answer the phone. Or when you mail in surveys to people and they don't always mail back, they don't always answer it. And then also we have something called undercoverage. And undercoverage is different than non-response bias because you don't even consider, you don't even include people in your sampling process. So for example, if you call people on the phone for a survey, you're not including people with, say, numbers that aren't in the phone book, or even people that don't have a telephone, like homeless people or prison inmates, people that don't have a residence with a phone number. And so sometimes when you have sampling processes like that, you're not always including the whole population. And so that's biases for the sampling. So this is the first section of Chapter 5.